Good morning and welcome to this Euractiv debate on the blue economy, the potential of our oceans to contribute to the green recovery. Our event today is supported by Equinor. I'm Brian Maguire. You can follow the debate at hashtags EA Debates and please tweet your comments using the hashtag. Our social media team will respond. And to ask questions, go to the chat section and use the ask button as well. So we'll interact with you later on. Now, by 2030, the blue economy could outperform the growth of the global economy as a whole, both in terms of value added and employment. As the sector currently employs 5 million Europeans, generating a turnover of 750 billion euros, and it has significant potential for the Green Deal as well. Just one example is maritime renewable energy, which is on track to produce up to 35% of the EU's electricity by 2050. The EU is a global leader in offshore wind energy, but it's also developing other emerging and promising technologies such as tidal and wave energy, floating solar panels and wind turbines. The EU's integrated maritime policy aims to adopt a more coherent European approach to maritime issues, but tensions and potential conflicting activities remain. In just a few minutes, we'll meet the panel to discuss these issues, but first, it's my pleasure to introduce the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
You're going to present the keynote address this morning, so the floor is all yours, sir.
Thank you, Brian, and good morning, of course, to everyone, and thank you, first of all, for organizing this conference to discuss the future of the blue economy. But thank you to all of those who tuned in this morning. I'm always glad to see there is strong public interest for this important subject, and as you know, the blue economy encompasses all activities related to ocean, seas, and coasts, and this can be activities that happen directly in the marine environment, like fishing or shipping, or activities that take place on land. Think of ports and shipyards, for instance. And the blue economy is a big chunk of the EU economy, with more than 650 billion euro in turnover and almost 5 million direct jobs. And its indirect impact, of course, is even much throughout a complex web of economic spins-off and supply chain. The ocean is the blue economy's most important asset. And at the same time, it is a privilege to work in such a precious environment that provides half of the global oxygen production, a huge carbon sink, a perpetual source of clean energy and highly nutritious food. And with privilege comes responsibility to protect this unique ecosystem, the source of our life. So at the start of our mandate, President von der Leyen asked me to develop a new approach to the blue economy. To me, this meant empower the blue economy pioneers and foster the transition to a sustainable economy in line with the European Green Deal. And after almost a year and a half in the job, I'm even more convinced that there can be no green without blue, that there can be no Green Deal without a sustainable blue economy. They are deeply interconnected. And let me clarify with a few examples. The blue economy links to the biodiversity strategy throughout sustainable fishing, nature-based solution, and responsible tourism, to the farm-to-fork strategy for sustainable seafood, including from aquaculture and algae production. And it contributes to climate change mitigation by developing marine renewable energy, by decarbonizing maritime transport and by greening ports, renewing the standards for the design of fishing gear, for ship recycling, and for the decommissioning of offshore platforms will make the economy more circular. And I could go on and on. The blue economy is a very dynamic sector full of innovation potential, which is essential to make such transformation to happen. So it was very clear which direction the new approach to the blue economy should take. But then the pandemic hit us. Restaurants closed, leaving fishermen and women and aquaculture producers with fresh products that could no longer be sold. Tourism, by far the largest employer in the blue economy, stopped completely. So not all maritime sectors were affected in the same way. Some might recover faster than others, but the crisis has revealed the vulnerability of each sector and has clearly uncovered the need for shorter, more sustainable and more resilient value chains. In a way, the pandemic has shown us what we knew all along, that current approach doesn't work anymore. The European recovery is not just about building back better, it's about building something new, starting from scratch if we have to. And you can't underestimate the potential role of the blue economy in that something new. Because behind renewable energy, behind green infrastructure, even behind natural capital protection, are hiding huge economic opportunities. Whenever we are rebuilding, whenever we are investing in the recovery, we follow the virtuous path of quality and well-being of working in with and for our environment. And that would be my main message to all blue economy operators and investments, and to all of you working in the policy domain. Now, talking about the policy, let's have a look what's on the agenda. Politically speaking, at least two things are happening right now for the blue economy. First, the Portuguese presidency is preparing council conclusions and ministerial meeting on the blue economy, so that member states' maritime priorities are redefined for the next 2 years. We are, of course, in close contact with them. Second, my services are finalizing a commission communication setting out a new approach to the blue economy. The communication sets out our vision for the blue economy along the Green Deal's axis of decarbonization, circularity, and biodiversity. In that vision, say 20 years from now, ocean energy will be powering most of the EU. How realistic is that? Well, we already have the plans in place that will lead to quintupling of offshore wind within the next 10 years. That's not just a vision, it's already happening, and we will go to 25 times the current capacity by 2050. We have a well-regulated energy market that gives the right investment signals. The electricity regulation provides rules on integrating large-scale renewable projects, notably offshore, into the energy system and the electricity market. We have a new offshore renewable strategy that sets ambitious targets for mature technologies and emerging solutions such as floating wind, wave and tidal energy. And the Next Generation EU Recovery Fund provides a unique opportunity to mobilize public capital. So we are well on our way to realize that vision. And not only that, ships will go on batteries, hydrogen, all alternative fuels, and we will have zero energy ports and new nature-based solutions protecting our coasts and wildlife. We will tie investments and public financing to clear benefits for the environment and our climate. We will use our maritime space rationally and effectively to make room for all economic activities as well as protection of marine life and habitats. And we will play a leading role in the global arena, not just on spatial planning, but also on sustainable fishing, aquaculture, plastic pollution, and so forth. In parallel, we will invest in ocean observation and deeper our knowledge of the marine environment to help us understand and predict how our activities in blue economy and beyond affect it. This science-based approach is the only way to ensure the sustainability and resilience of the blue economy. From the extensive consultations that we held last year among experts, stakeholders, and the public at large, I'm confident that we are ready to do this. We can make it happen, but it will only work if all players align themselves and work in the same direction. Stakeholders, businesses, large and small, local groups, young people passionate about the health of our ocean and the general public. I also realize that the transition will be expensive, but there is a access to public funds. This is an exceptional situation and a unique opportunity we should not miss. For instance, it is essential that member states' national resilience and recovery plans and national operational programs for 2021-2027 are channeled in that direction and complement each other. Also, the new European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund will play a key role, especially with its Blue Invest platform and the new Blue Invest Fund. This coupled with other EU programs such as Horizon Europe. But most of all, I believe in a high return on investment. The work to mitigate and adapt to climate change, to restore biodiversity and the resilience of our marine ecosystem, to build a stronger economic model and embrace a circular economy will in itself create tangible opportunities for new jobs and businesses across Europe. So now is the time. The ocean plays a fundamental role in human life, and it's finally getting the spotlight. If we save the ocean, the ocean will save us. So let's prepare for this exciting journey. I will probably stop here. I wish you a very productive discussions.
Commissioner, thanks for taking time to be with us this morning. I appreciate just how broad the scope is, and perhaps it's an area which many people are not that familiar with as well. But as you say, there's huge potential, and the ambition is there to do this. And so we'll discuss with our panel about how we implement that ambition, how we achieve these goals, and what the perspectives are for Europe to invest more, and as you say, get that return on investment as well. So thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Commissioner Sinkevičius. We have most of our panel with us. Some connection issues this morning, but let me introduce the panel, and we'll get everyone back on in just a moment. We have just appeared there John Bell. He is the Director of Healthy Planet at Director General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. We have Bernard Fries. He's the Director of Maritime Policy and Blue Economy at the DG responsible for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries at the European Commission. Joining us very shortly will be MEP Claudia Matero de Aguiar. She's Vice Chair of the Committee on Fisheries at the European Parliament. We have Raquel Gao. She's All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassador from Portugal. And from Equinor we have Tove Lund. She's the Head of Safety, Security and Sustainability for New Energy Solutions at Equinor, and also Chairwoman of the Global Offshore Wind Health and Safety Organization. Great to have you all with us this morning. I'm just going to ask you for a quick opening statement just to set the scene for what you want to speak about today. John Bell, let's kick off with you. The floor is yours, sir.
Just has said, the European Green Deal is a systemic shift in what the European Union is about, and we won't make it without oceans and seas and a new blue economy being put in place. So the question from the research innovation point of view is, if we're going to have a transition by design over 30 years, how do we put the means in place to deliver the vision that Commissioner Sinkevičius has set out? So we know a program that is going to embody the kind of mission thinking that we need to make this journey happen. We have a new Blue Economy partnership. We're launching a new mission on the restoration of the oceans and seas by 2030, and we have a massive array of international cooperation. So how do we put the means in place is one of the questions. How do we get there to the sustainable blue economy vision that has been set out? We need to do all the things the Commissioner said. We need to give the discovery and the understanding of what we need. We need to demonstrate solutions. We need to deploy, have the appliance of science in terms of new ways and means of addressing the big systemic risks. We need to de-risk investment, and we need to get population involved. So bottom line, what we're going to do soon is launch, as Commissioner von der Leyen announced last night at the Nobel Award, a series of European Green Deal missions, like moonshot missions. Think about this one as the inner space mission. We're going to launch a mission on the ocean and seas restoration by 2030, and we're going to put in place the means at scale to address the issues in terms of ecosystems, decarbonisation, pollution, and connect up and complete the knowledge gaps, build the governance, and engage the public in doing that. And the whole point of all of this is that we're going to have this transition by design. We need to have the means to do that. So research and innovation, the basic message here is research and innovation has a different role here to support policy, innovation, markets in turning what is a blind spot in the Green Deal into a sustainable blue economy through what we could call a blue enlightenment. Thank you.
Discover, demonstrate and apply. Key takeaway from that. Thank you so much. Bernard Fries, you have the floor, sir. A quick statement.
Good morning. Thank you. I'll elaborate in my statement just quickly on what the Commissioner said about us launching a new blue economy strategy on the 12th of May. Just to say what is the key point of that strategy, it is to implement in the oceans, in the ocean economy, in the maritime economy, the blue economy, the transformational shift that the European Green Deal that Ursula von der Leyen has put on the table is advocating. And I'm going to give you sort of my take on what sustainable blue economy, what sustainable means in that context, right? It means two things. Number one, it means seizing the opportunities we have for credible sustainable activities. And that means basically activities that are renewable energy. It means activities, economic activities that are circular economy. It means recycling. It means avoiding and curbing pollution. These are all opportunities that can create new technology, of course, but often Europe is leading in many of these areas. New jobs, they can be a vector for recovery. As the Commissioner said, this is the new thing where we have in Europe an opportunity to really lead and create value. And there's a second aspect to it, and that is sustainable means also scaling down the kind of activities that are harmful, that are polluting, that are fossil fuel based, that are creating greenhouse gas emissions. Because the core of the Green Deal is to decarbonize our society, is to reach the 55% reduction target by 2030 and become carbon free in 1 or 2 decades afterwards. So that means basically, to give a concrete example or 1 or 2 examples, it means for energy, it means renewables up, but oil and gas down. We need to have a plan to both increase renewables and to scale down in the oceans oil and gas exploitation. And if you look at plastics, at pollution, there are many opportunities to have alternative materials, that packaging material, one-way products that can be used for more sustainable materials, natural fibers. These are really good technologies that can grow. At the same time, it means we need to go to the source and to the factories where plastic is produced today and affect that transition, not only when it arrives in the water, in the seas, but all along the value chain. So sustainability for us means seizing the opportunities, but also doing the right thing.
Excellent, Bernard. Thank you so much. Raquel Gao.
And thank you for the invitation to be in such a distinguished panel. Well, my generation is the first generation to have grown up in a world where information is at the tip of our fingers, but also we are the first generation where climate change is in the international debate daily. So we are constantly reminded that we need to change fast and that our future might not be as good as we were hoping for. So having said that, it was mentioned before that the blue economy has the potential to outperform the growth of the global economy as a whole, but the world simply cannot withstand any more economic growth that is made at the cost of environmental degradation and the natural capital depletion. So we need this new economic model that everyone is talking about that decouples the economic growth from environmental degradation, carbon neutral, a blue economy that is regenerative, that is circular, like Bernard already said. And the European Green Deal sets a great baseline for that. But the youth needs to be listened to because we dare to make the complicated questions, we think outside the box, and we actually have the younger generations already depending on us for this fast transition, this shift. So whether if it's by founding our own startups, creating innovative technologies, or being a part of networks like I am today, we need to be part of the conversation, just like I am today addressing you with this statement. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Raquel. Tove Lund, over to you. I think you're on mute at the moment, Tove. And we're still waiting for Claudia to join us also. She's having connection issues. Tove, can you hear us now? Yeah?
Yes, I'm very sorry.
No problem. Floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great to hear Commissioner Sinkevicius's views. Europe has an enormous maritime space, and we must use it wisely for its sustainable growth. As the offshore renewable energy strategy acknowledges, I'm convinced that renewables will be crucial to boost the economic recovery and achieve EU's climate targets. In Equinor, we have set out to become an offshore wind major, and we have large ambitions for floating wind, a technology that we have been a true pioneer in developing. In 2017, we put Hywind Scotland, the world's first floating offshore wind farm, in operation. And we see a great potential for floating wind in Europe. And our ambitions is to make floating commercial by 2030. To drive a sustainable ocean development where renewables play an increasing role, I will highlight the following priorities. First, as chair of the Global Offshore Wind Health and Safety Organization, the G+, I believe a safe industry will be a prerequisite for success, and hence safeguarding people needs to be at the cornerstone also of a blue economy. Second, our license to operate will further be linked to our ability to coexist and protect the environment. And therefore, marine spatial planning at sea basin level is not only a natural enabler for access to acreage and grid developments, it will be essential for efficient space use and coexistence. And in Equinor, we have a long experience in collaborating and coexisting with fisheries, as this is the other industry in Norway. Third, research and innovation will be important. Equinor is committed to continue paving the way for innovative renewable technologies. But R&I needs to be turned into viable and strategic industrial projects. And we are convinced that the EU will be in a privileged position to direct its R&I towards scale-up in floating wind. And with that, I look forward to our further discussions. Thanks.
So thank you so much. We also have with us Claudia Matero de Aguiar. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, everything's fine, thank you.
Excellent. So we just heard from the Commissioner, and each of the panelists have just given a short introductory statement as well. So I'll give you the floor for your opening remarks as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and for the invitation to be here with you today. Well, just some notes and some thoughts. Of course, that we know that the use of the ocean as a resource implies all stakeholders' involvement in two ways: in its preservation and in its governance. After all, this sector employs around 5 million people and generates a turnover of 750 billion euros. It's significantly leveraged by coastal tourism. However, it's not possible to involve all stakeholders if they are not aware of the marine ecosystem as a whole, its weaknesses, strengths, and of course, its opportunities. The European Commission 2020 report on EU blue economy reveals some stagnation in the gross added value of the sector in the last decade. So we must ask ourselves, there's a margin to do more and to do better? I think so, I believe so, but it will only be possible if all agents understand the sea, which can only be used with more education, more training, and especially at the top executives of companies operating in the blue economy. On perspectives of the enterprises, they have to have a 360 degrees of a view of the EU funding available, and of course, the possibilities of blending different ones. Concerning blue economy, the companies have at their disposal the MFF, the Horizon 2020, and others. There is also a EU guide funding focused on coastal and maritime tourism, covering 12 programs of the former MFF. I have already asked the Commission to update this guide to the new MFF, so that in this way operators have at their disposal examples of projects awarded and possible ways of apply for financial assistance for the development of sustainable and innovative projects in coastal areas. Oceans and coastal areas are very complex and fragile ecosystems. Still, they can generate wealth in fisheries and aquaculture, coastal tourism, gastronomy, research and development, if well managed. So that's why I recently urged the European Commission effort to strengthen its education programs for marine biodiversity, ocean governance, and sustainable management of coastal areas. A whole new world for blue literacy, not only in schools with younger population, but with companies and with investors. Bet on closer link between universities, research centers, and business world. it's very important to create literacy programs for, as I said previously, senior executives in micro, small and medium enterprises. They need skills. We need to provide them skills to optimize their wealth creative potential. I consider it's also very important that the outermost regions, to their natural connection to the sea, establish cooperation agreements with third countries regions with similar characteristics. I'm taking in Cabo Verde, in São Tomé, examples, exporting their knowledge and thereby creating economies of scale that make investments attractive to companies and simultaneously implement good governance practices in less developed countries. The outermost regions have all the conditions to serve as a barometer for the governance of oceans. And I will finalize with the last remark, a very positive note for the mission Starfish 2030, in which the European Commission identifies 5 areas of action for the oceans that seem crucial to my understanding and goes in the direction of what I've just exposed now: knowledge, recovery, zero pollution, decarbonization, and overall governance. Our seas needs urgent intervention. I think that we all agree with that, but only with the involvement of everyone we will achieve this purpose of this goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all our panelists for opening remarks. John Bell, you know green economy without the blue economy. We've touched on a lot of different subjects here, a lot of different dimensions with the opening statements as well. And we're going to try and go through each of these. But the headline seems to be in terms of offshore wind, renewable energy as well. Is this going to be the driving force behind the success of this policy?
I think what you're talking about is moving from a kind of an outdated concept of that we just do fish and chips into actually looking at what a sustainable blue economy looks like. The opportunities here are also linked to the challenges that the Commissioner has set out. If you look at the blue bioeconomy, for example, there are whole new areas, new business models, new innovations, new ways of working, which are available. If you think about the challenge of the restoration of the ecosystems, there are whole new areas of value chains and services that can be developed. If you look at the questions of food from the sea or feed from the sea, there are whole new areas, again, new value chains which are being developed. In terms of what was raised earlier on, in terms of the harnessing of data coming from the oceans, which will be at a huge scale as we put in place fit-for-purpose observation systems. What will happen with that data in terms of its transformation, new goods and services? You look at the materials that Bernard has spoken about, the new value chains. We can give all kinds of examples where you see these new, for example, biorefineries in fishing areas in different parts of Europe, which are taking the waste out of the circular system and transforming it into high value-added biomaterials, biochemicals, building blocks, replacing fossil products and so forth. So the opportunity is enormous. We obviously have to make a win on the areas where we're going to hit these targets in terms of renewable energy, and maybe research and innovation is going to have to step up in terms of cracking some of the breakthroughs on the more difficult technologies and their applications. In the ecosystems area, how are we going to go about this business of restoring, putting the means in place by 2030, which is what Mission Starfish is about, to actually complete the transformation, the rebuilding, the renewal of our ecosystems. And on pollution, I mean, simply on that alone, this is going to be a huge opportunity in terms of Europe leading, not simply on the regulatory environment, which can be smart and giving incentives to investment, but technologies and solutions that will result in globally leading ways of addressing what is the single biggest driver at the moment in terms of moving forward in the public's mind. So I think the opportunities are extraordinary, and I think the European Union is in a very good position to develop all of these areas, including the areas that we've spoken about earlier on, and energy.
Thank you. Claudia Matero doesn't have a lot of time with us, so I just want to spend a little more time with her for now. Claudia, you talk about education as well, and as a critical part of this dynamic. And I think it's fair to say that most people don't think too much about the ocean in terms of sustainability, in terms of carbon reduction. So there's huge scope for opportunity there. But who takes the lead with education? And where should we focus? Should we be focusing, like Raquel said, on the younger generation that can be more innovative and can develop over time? Or do we focus on an older generation that's been fishing and taking care of tourism but now needs new opportunities? How do we educate across these different levels that you spoke of?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I think that we need to look to overall as a system, and we need to understand that at the European level, if you launch the opportunities and if you create programs and you can create financial support to adapt for these programs of literacy, of course you have the hat of the European Union. But then at the national government's level, you can implement also a different kind of programs with this aid and with this lead coming from the European Commission or from the European institutions. And I think that the best needs to be done in both segments that you spoke about. With the young generation, of course, literacy is important to make them be more connected to the oceans, to the sea, to respect the oceans and the sea, to understand how biodiversity, ecosystems, but also how fisheries also have an important role on this ecosystem, and to understand how can they in the future can co-work and to respect oceans and seas at that level. Of course, that speaking about seniors and another generation, I think it's also important to analyze and to promote this literacy, as I said previously, also connecting with the universities, with research, and if all stakeholders are aligned, I think that this much can be done, and for the next years or the next generation, speaking about young people, you can create this input that can make the turnover of a generation.
You're from Madeira, an island, and do people there think in terms of wind energy as an opportunity for the economy?
Yes, of course. We have that. The government also analyzes that. We have implemented also in the island the wind energy. We have also a focus on aquaculture and our connection, of course, naturally with the sea, with the oceans are very keen. And of course, the universities here have also an important role to do and to connect with the government and with the implementation of the systems. But yes, I think that we have a positive approach on wind, on aquaculture, as I said, and with universities. So, as I said previously in the beginning, I think that outermost regions can play an important role as promoters of this whole ecosystem that can be worked together and connected with the goals of a more greener and a more bluer agenda that we want to implement for the next future, or the near future. Sorry.
Both you and Claudia Matero have mentioned the management of this is key. Doing this safely, doing this in a responsible way as well. For an island like Madeira, which obviously tourism is extremely important, how do you go about managing offshore wind farms without damaging the tourist sector, for example? What do you mean by a safe and approach and a good governance when it comes to offshore wind?
Were you asking me? Sorry.
When you talk about good governance and talk about safe management of offshore wind, how do you reconcile that and balance it with concerns like an island like Madeira may have, though not just there, about the tourist industry, the impact of renewable projects, and how do you involve stakeholders that may be concerned about the devalued coastline with offshore wind projects? How do you manage this process and do it safely?
Yes, okay. I'm a little confused of who you are asking, really. I think for us as a developer, the stakeholding engagement is very, very key. So we very early start out trying to map out who's our stakeholders. And of course, trying to understand what is a potential impact of a development. So that will be kind of very important part of the development of a project. And then kind of the permitting and the consenting process following standard and accepted protocols of the industry. We very much align with the IFC standards as a standard for our ways of developing our wind farms.
And what does that mean in terms of dealing with the population, and who are the main stakeholders in this kind of construction project? Because if we're to achieve the decarbonisation using aquaculture to achieve this, there's going to be massive investment on large-scale wind farms across Europe and solar farms as well. Who are the key players in this? Is it the coastal areas themselves? Is it national governments, or who do you need to speak to and convince most of all? Because planning and planning permission is obviously a part of this too. Tove.
Yeah, thanks. It's very much about fisheries that we have been talking about, and that the Commissioner also alluded to, how to coexist in particular then with fishing interests, because there will be impacts in the area. But obviously also key stakeholders will be the public, depending on kind of how far away from shore is the development. So the closer to the shore, the more visual it will be. And then of course you will have to have a good dialogue with stakeholders in the public as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's okay. Bernard Fries wanted to comment also. Bernard.
Yeah, thanks. Just to comment on that, we think that to reach the renewables targets that will be essential, we'll need about 3 to 4% of the sea space, which is significant. It's significant. So this is, of course, not easy in a congested sea space like we have in the North Sea, in the Western waters, in the Baltic especially, also the Mediterranean, where there's shipping, where there's fishing, where there are many other activities, where we need to be very careful not to harm environmentally sensitive areas. There's two things. We have actually a process working with member states through a directive, and member states are in the process right now to put forward maritime spatial plans that try to take these things into account. And going forward, secondly, and that's one of the things we are going to put out on the 12th of May, is we will propose creating a blue forum to bring all these different, sometimes conflicting interests on board, to make sure that really this process is managed in an equitable way, right? So that we both are equitable to the environment and we are equitable to those stakeholders, fishermen and others who are concerned, but yet make it possible to go down that road, because without renewables, we are not going to meet the Green Deal.
Okay, so do you think it's possible to keep that bigger picture in mind with stakeholders, that look, we have to achieve this Green Deal, because otherwise the potential disaster that comes from that, there has to be a trade-off, there has to be an acceptability that offshore wind, solar farms, they have to be done, but we're going to do them in a sensible way. Is this a narrative that people understand yet, Bernard, or is this something which the communications really has to be rolled out with?
I think they understand it, and you know, there are always vested interests and legitimate vested interests, and we have to take them into account. But I think we understand that, and what we will try to do with our new blue economy strategy is precisely to try to trigger that kind of shift of mentality and set out a vision that can help rally people around. I've seen an initiative report, I think, in the Fisheries Committee of the European Parliament that has addressed that in a very constructive way. And of course, this is sometimes a very political issue. We have to not just address it technically, but politically, and you know, work with everybody. Basically, it needs to be inclusive.
Raquel, you know, when you're looking at career options, most people aren't thinking about the ocean right now, and yet there's huge potential when it comes to research and investment. You know, the development projects, the supporting industries that will help develop the coastline, whether it's in terms of tourism, fisheries, or energy supplies. You know, for your generation, do you see opportunity here, or, like I asked Bernard, do people just not understand the situation yet?
Well, as someone that comes from the scientific side, I did my bachelor in biology and the master in marine biology. So I was already prone to look at the ocean. And also I'm Portuguese, so we have a close connection with the ocean. I can see from my colleagues that are not from marine biology that don't see our ocean, and usually they even don't understand how big is our ocean, how biodiverse it is, and how can we, as already was said, we can use ingredients from the ocean to make cosmetics, to make pharmaceuticals, to make biomaterials. And taking the point of Claudia, we need to connect the research with industry. We need to connect people from different areas, from economics, and from science. So also the managers and the economists understand that the ocean has potential, and even more has potential because it can be sustainable the way we explore the ocean. So the feeling that I have is that people that come from the scientific side are taught only to make research and not to think on a way of applying the research, and also in cultivating this systemic way of thinking. So often I see youth recycling and not thinking, you know, if they have a place to put the plastic, but the place is full, they will go there and put the plastic, and if there is wind, the plastic just goes away. So they are not thinking systemically, okay, it's better not to recycle if the bin is full, you know, or let's not eat meat or fish, but then let's go buy a vegetable that comes from the other part of the world and has a big carbon footprint. So I think that we need to start thinking more systemically and bringing people from different backgrounds together. And I think this is missing. I think we can work more in that part.
Okay, thank you. We have lots of questions coming through, which we're going to come to in a few minutes. But if you're sending questions and you want someone specifically to address it, please put that in the comments, and we'll deal with that in a few minutes as well. Claudia, you know, what we heard from Raquel there as well, you know, there's huge opportunity, and the scale of this ambition is massive. Often European projects don't accelerate quickly enough because the administration required is too heavy, the funding is not well enough understood as well. So, you know, John said at the beginning, we have to discover, we have to demonstrate, and we need to apply. So in terms of the application of these policies, Claudia, you know, what have we learned before that can help accelerate this? Because the timeline's pretty short.
Well, it's true, and as we all know, the bureaucracy that involves all the institutions at the European level is huge. So more and more we ask for to try to reduce the bureaucracy in each processes that involve the European Commission, but also the European Parliament. And also, I think that one of the problems that Raquel pointed out, I think that also comes with this new way of how politics is being done, and how we are also seeing the implementation and this populism and this kind of politics that are in extreme ways. And this, what Raquel said about some politic groups that want to impose taxes, want to impose that everyone needs to stop eat fish, then needs to stop to eat meal, then needs to implement ways of eating only soja. I do respect all that, but we can not only impose the closure of one thing to implement other that has also a carbon footprint, because we need to import from other points of the world. So we need to also find balance in things, find balance in positions and in policies when creating policies. So I think that there's a huge challenge ahead with the democracies, with the extreme positions that
on exactly
are
this,
opening.
On exactly this,
Yeah.
Most people, they're not really concerned about the practicalities of harmony, except if it doesn't produce a benefit for them. Most people are concerned about jobs. And so the blue economy and its job growth potential as well, Claudia, is this the selling point? Is that we do this well, we bring jobs to your community, there's the whole economy will benefit from this. Is that the single rallying point for this rather than the environmental argument?
Well, of course that it's important and it matters, because in the end of the day, it's true that they are creating a workforce, and they develop some areas that if it was not that possibility, the development would be not succeeded or would not happen. What I say here and what I put always in my work from the point of view of the decision maker is to find a balance. Of course that we want growth, we want development, but we need to balance that with the respect from the oceans, the biodiversity. We need to find a balance between what you said previously, with research, with the fisheries, the fishermen, because they are also an important important members of this community, of some communities, and in the end of the day, they earn money and their families depend on that. So this kind of involvement needs to be done.
Let me ask John Bell about this. John, it's in terms of the job side of this as well. In Brussels, we'll talk a lot about the environmental responsibility, about sustainability, things like this as well. If you go, you're from Ireland, I'm from Ireland. We have a lot of fishermen who they have seasonal jobs in the fishing industry, and the rest of the year they may work on farms, or they simply struggle to make a living to provide for their family. Is the same thing I asked Claudia, is this about selling this project to the public in terms of jobs and recovery rather than talking about the environment? How would you think that this is best done? John Bell.
Well, I agree with Claudia that there's no easy either ors. This is a transition, and it's a transition from where we are to where we need to be. And the transition, when we use the word sustainable, we're talking about the economy, the environment, and the society. Now, to give you some examples of how we need to take the knowledge that is there and to apply it in ways which will create economic growth in communities where we have fisheries and key tourism. We see in the blue bioeconomy, for example, in different parts of Europe, that in fishery communities, the appliance of new technologies to waste in circularity is generating entirely new industries in nutrients and feed and food and cosmetics and building blocks, high value added building blocks for things like bio-based chemicals and plastic substitutes for fossils and so forth. And the same with renewability. The renewable energies will require the interaction with local communities. At the end of the day, we need to do and. And what we need to do is to put in place the means, the solutions to test them, to demonstrate them, to deploy them. Another word is to de-risk them. We need to create the financial system with our partners in the recovery funds and the banks, in the European Investment Bank and so forth, that we can actually replicate, scale up, and involve a growth into an economic scale where you will get, through the proper skilling and involvement of people, entirely new businesses. To give you a very simple example, if you think about the Copernicus developments, 20 years ago, the idea is that that kind of science and technology is now producing all kinds of jobs and growth in navigation, in prediction, in insurance, in other areas. And this is what we need to do. So if you take the problem of biodiversity, or the problem of ecosystems, or the problem of pollution, we need an entirely new part of the economy that will be anchored in these communities who know best what needs to be done in their sea basins. And that's why we need mission thinking, which bring these ideas together with clear destinations, clear targets, and research innovation stepping up, not simply putting the knowledge in place. And there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be put in place. The appliance of that science in solutions, market models, and scalable investments.
Excellent. Thank you. Bernard, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, thank you. Just to fully agree with what John said, just to give it a bit of practical flavor, we think that the offshore renewables alone can create 200,000 new jobs by mid of the decade, 2025, right? Just with the investments that are already in the pipeline. And these are new jobs. And just go to to Cherbourg or to the coastal regions where these plants and these assembly plants are being set up. It's a perspective, I think. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't ignore traditional industries, but there's an enormous upside potential in actually the kind of dynamism that we can develop. And when it comes to fishermen, I remember when I was fisheries director doing an outing to Kilkeel, no longer European Union now, but in Northern Ireland, where fishermen were actually making revenue from providing servicing to offshore platforms. So there is a symbiosis possible between the traditional way of earning money and new ways of earning money. And I think these are the kind of things that you should try to foster and develop, and there where we can help. Excellent.
If you wait long enough, maybe Kilkeel will be back in the union as well. Tove Lund, 200,000 new jobs in a short space of time. That's pretty substantial, and that's just the start of it as well. Your company will play a significant role in that as well. And as you move towards decarbonisation for the industrial structure, there's a huge opportunity for you there too. In terms of the de-risking for the investment that John mentions as well, how does Equinor see the investment opportunity? Is the investment environment right for you? And companies like you to invest in this, or is there a regulatory environment which you need to see adjusted? What's your scan on that?
Well, of course, there's a financial driver here for us to be in this space, but really to develop it further, the financial framework needs to be in place. But more and more so, we see areas where competition now is towards kind of more on a net zero basis. So there's been a huge drive down of costs, new technology, and development of new technology will really require a framework in place. Like I mentioned, for the floating offshore wind, to get that to a commercial stage, we really need to scale up and commercialize it. So that will require frameworks, financial support to really demonstrate that. So yes, there is financial drivers, of course, to be in an industry. Compared to what we do in addition in my company, the reward is or the internal rate of returns are lower, but the risk involved is somewhat lower also.
Okay, thank you. I want to return to that in a few minutes. Claudia, you had a comment to make.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of connected with what Tove said now, but especially to Bernard when talking about what we need to do to put all people together and to involve all people. And I forgot to mention that not only because I come from an island and an outermost region, and I do understand that, but also coming from Portugal and with the impact that the tourism has in our economy that I wanted to say previously, we need also to involve stakeholders agents coming from tourism, because you have the visual impact. You need to involve them because they create also value for the countries and for regions, the tourism stakeholders. So you need also to involve them to make them understand what is the added value of having that in those regions or in these countries. And I wanted just to share with you, but I remember that when we first implement aquaculture in Madeira, and it's still an issue. We need to deal first with citizens, because the impact of the jails are big, and then you have also to speak with fishermen, but people related also to the tourism industry. That it's the point that I wanted to share with you, with hotels, with restaurants, with everyone that deal with this day by day, and you need to show them what will be the benefit, what would be the added value for the region, and how can they benefit with that. And it was just a compliment to see that and to understand that this involvement is crucial for the development of any point related to the economy.
Just before we came on air, I was speaking with Commissioner Sinkevicius about exactly this and about the age profile in fishing as well. That young people don't want to go into fishing. It's too hard, it's too unstable. And he spoke about needing to create a sustainable living wage as well, so that young people are more able to go in to find a stable salary, so they can plan for a family, they can get their mortgage, things like this as well. So when we talk about investment in this sector as well, do you consider that there needs to be an economic remodeling for aquaculture as well? Claudia.
Yes, and we need to look at them. I know that Commissioner Sinkevicius is very keen on promoting the blue economy, and also wants to bring more people, and I'm very supportive of that, to bring more young people to this to the fisheries. But as you mentioned before, you need to create them the support, the financial support, because young people don't have the support, the financial support to buy new boats, to buy one boat, to go to the bank and to ask for support, financial support for that. So there's a lot of things to do, and not only to say that it's important that young people come to fisheries. We need to create all these conditions so that they can see an opportunity in the sea. And I think that the challenges are huge, because with digitalization, with this double transformation that we want to foreseen and to implement in our societies, the green transition, the digital transition is important. So let's find out how can young people can be more connected to these new areas, and to, of course, try to understand what will be the professions of the future. What skills are needed to these new professions, and how can we manage to put them, the young people, connected with the seas, connected with fisheries, but also with this transition. So that is why at the EU level we need to create these conditions, programs that the Commission needs to launch, but also financial support for that, because programs without financial support, it's not used to implement.
Okay, Raquel, in terms of upskilling and reskilling, this reskilling used to be something that you would think of in terms of mid-stage career or older as well, but the prospect of any young person having a stable career, which is one track, is near impossible today. So, do you see an opportunity for, when you talk about upskilling and reskilling and the aquaculture, is it important that people see a stable career path, or is it important that the financial stability is there? And what I mean by that is, if you have to work in a seasonal environment in tourism, for example, along coastlines, but then another season you're involved in offshore construction for wind energy or the supply chain for that, or another part is the fishing industry as well. How would you like to see this financial framework worked out so that there is stability for your generation and an incentive for young people to go into the blue economy?
Thank you for that question. Well, I think the first thing I noticed a lot is that it is common to have non-paid internships in some areas. For example, in the areas of conservation of cetaceans, there is a lot this idea that the early career you have to start with an internship, and usually it's not paid. And I see some young people that just get used to it. First it's not paid, then they are going to be paid with a small salary, and because they see that the others also are not being so well paid, they don't demand for more. So for sure, I think we need to make more attractive the ocean careers to young people, so they want to be there. But also, young people care about where they work for, in terms of if the company is caring about the environment. I think this is also a very big characteristic of our generation. So if the fisheries are using fishing gear that is destructive, I see very often that people do not want to be working for that. They want to be, okay, maybe working with fisheries, but small-scale fisheries. But if they work with small-scale fisheries, they will probably be less well paid. So for sure, this has to be something that should be solved. In terms of aquaculture, I see big opportunities coming up, I think, at least here in Portugal, when it comes to multi-trophic aquaculture that is sustainable. And people are learning in college about all the advantage of that type of aquaculture. And I see, at least here in Portugal, people that are interested in going to companies that are making algae, for example, in an aquaculture that it also has fish and it mimics the ecosystem and has quite good efficiency, and it's sustainable. So they like to work on that kind of jobs. And also, again, the importance of networks. People sometimes don't know the type of jobs that a marine scientist can have. And being a part of network, being in contact with aquaculture, with people from biotechnology, people even that are working in, like you said, wind float farms. Usually the youth can make some questions that are interesting. For example, if you're making infrastructure for wind floating farms, you can maybe put artificial coral and make it use that infrastructure to make a more biodiverse spot and mitigate the impact of these wind floats. So this out-of-the-box thinking, I think we can give.
Thank you. A quick comment from Bernard, I think wanted to come, and then we're going to take some comments and questions as well. We have loads coming in, actually. Bernard.
Okay, thanks. I think Raquel made some really, really good points. Just to maybe one or two thoughts on fisheries. The experience we have made, and personally, I've been managing Northern European fisheries for 7-8 years, so I know it a little bit. We have seen that more fisheries become sustainable, respectful of the environment, and we have made huge progress on that, right, in the last years. More, they also become profitable, and there's an internal dynamic that sort of correlates economic performance and environmental performance. I think it's a very important lesson to learn. And of course, I realize it's still different between small scale and larger scale and industrial and local fisheries. But the overall trend is doing good. They got even reasonably well through the pandemic with our help. We did an emergency funding program last year. And my hope is that this trend will continue. And I think it's a lesson also for other areas. Like if you look at maritime tourism, right? If we manage to go into a direction where there is more of a value proposition, where we get away from seasonality, from the kind of not only beach tourism, but we look at more sustainable models of tourism, then we also perhaps come to a situation where those who rely on these incomes have more of an even and balanced income over the whole year. And then on aquaculture, I think a lot of the problems, and by the way, also on algae, which has huge potential in Europe, and again, Europe is leading in many ways there. A lot of the problems are actually red tape, local red tape also. If you're a trout farmer in Poland and the local authority doesn't understand why you need a water permit, the bank is not going to give you a loan for that. So this is things that we need to mainstream into the whole administration, and that's one thing we work on. And then, of course, skills are important, right? We have active programs funded by the EU budget for skills, and these are important things to do as well. So many good points, and thank you, Raquel. I think you made a few really good points there.
Super, thank you. Let's go to some of the questions and comments. John Bell, this one's for you. Just quick answers and we'll run through lots of these. What will be new, this is from Reino Lucas, what will be new in the review of the Blue Economy Strategy the Commission will present on the 12th of May compared to the old one from 2012? John.
Is leading on that, but I think what you'll see is the vision has been set as sustainability is the goal and putting in place the means to achieve them. And I think from our point of view, an anchoring of research and innovation in deployment.
Thank you. Bernard, from Deauville Gasparucci, I'm sorry for the mispronunciation of your name. Bernard, can you please comment on the new initiative you mentioned, the Blue Forum? Tell us a bit more about the Blue Forum.
So the basic idea is what we discussed earlier, that we need to bring together all the stakeholders in our seas in order to have a dialogue, and the dialogue should basically lead to balancing the interests. Right, one of the commodities that is really scarce is space, and there's a huge environmental risk in encroaching more on in the limited space we have in our seas. We're not even in the situation of Norway, which has a huge sea area. We have confined seas in the North Sea, in the Baltic Sea, in the Mediterranean. We need to bring under one common denominator all the different interests and make sure that solutions are equitable and that it's sustainable. Very importantly, also sustainable and in line with all our targets in the marine environment and environmental legislation and so on. So the idea is to set up something that will establish a dialogue that is proactive, that makes us not only react to complaints when we receive them, but we address them beforehand and find solutions.
Thank you. There's another question here for Bernard, but I want to ask Claudia first. It was mentioned that 3 to 4% of the EU sea space needs to be reserved for sustainable projects. How realistic is that, Claudia?
Well, we managed to focus on the research that also the European Commission does, and together with all stakeholders. So I think that those metrics are analyzed with a group of experts. And how can we manage to achieve them? We all need to do our efforts politically at the EU level, but also together with the governments. And I think that this mission, Starfish 2030, has really indeed identified areas that of action for the ocean. And I think that if we all work together, implementing them and working together with national governments and also with with the governments of the outermost regions at all levels and work locally, I think that we want to manage that, to achieve those goals. So I think that there's a huge effort to be done, because as it was said in the beginning, well, the time is short and the ambition is big. So I don't know if we will manage to do that, but I think that the scope is good. So we need to put all stakeholders together, and with this kind of conferences on blue, but not only conference, we need to discuss is important, but most of the conference, we need to involve them, to listen to the others, to listen to stakeholders, and to show results. How can we implement this in real time? How can we create value for communities, for member states with these goals?
Thank you. I know you have to leave us now, so thanks very much for taking the time to be with us this morning, Claudia. We'll see you soon. Tove, let's
thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. Tove, let's just stay in this for a second as well. From your perspective, from industrial side, 3 to 4% of the EUC space are reserved for this. Do you think that's realistic? Do you think the figure is more or less accurate?
I think it's important to have goals like that, and I think it resonates well with Equinor's position. For us, it's kind of we're very much a values-based company. Where kind of how we deliver and do our business is key to us. So we have just recently updated our own biodiversity policy, and among other things, we've clearly identified areas that we would kind of select not to be involved with, and areas where we will have to kind of implement measures. So whether or not kind of the number is accurate, I think it's important that we do have some areas that we actually are careful about and protect.
Can you give us some idea of what those areas are that you would prefer to avoid, at least for the moment?
Those would be typically areas with the highest protection and restrictions, very much in line with the suggestions now that has come through the EU. So it correlates very well with what the EU puts in place.
Okay, and when you talk about safety, which is obviously your specialism, is this what you mean in terms of risk avoidance, where there are high impact areas that you're looking for, is safer, more manageable investment areas, which you think are sustainable over the longer term?
Yes, I think the main key there is actually also, of course, as Claudia talked about, is skills. You really need to understand the ocean, and you need to understand the risk picture. So really getting a good grip of what is really the risks in the area that you are looking at. And there's no kind of one size fits all. It's very kind of dependent on where you are, and you have to scale your actions accordingly. But for us, it's very important to understand what we're up against. And we have in certain processes avoided areas because to us it could represent a too high risk from a sustainability point of view.
Okay, thank you. John, we're asked here about the Rainer looked us asked, what will become of the exploration of gas and oil in the new strategy?
Well, I think Bernard is leading on the new strategy there, Brian.
Okay.
I'd leave it to him to. I think he gave a very clear signal in his intervention. Bernard.
Go ahead, Bernard.
I think the paradigm is to understand to have a sense of the urgency we are facing, right? We are unfortunately in a situation where we have to tackle multiple crises, and we have the crisis of the ocean environment, and our mission Ocean is going to be one way we try to address that. We have very ambitious targets in the recent last year's biodiversity strategy that we really have to make an effort to meet. It will be a big effort, And we have the climate crisis, and it's probably the defining crisis of our age. So it's very clear. As much as I commend what companies like Equinor are doing on renewables, and it's great. I mean, more you do there, better it is. As much it is necessary that the same companies basically retire their oil and gas operations and don't start new ones. I mean, I've read that there's a new exploration oil gas exploration field planned in the Arctic, starting in 1 or 2 years' time. This is the wrong moment to do that. So that's a very clear message I would like to give, to say that this is a sustainable transition. Transition means going in the right direction and avoiding that we do harm. Do better and don't do harm. These two things go together.
Thank you. Just stay with us there, Bernard. It's another question from Anonymous, who says, how will the ocean mission support emerging renewables like wave and tidal?
Good question. So first of all, I mean, these technologies have potential. They are pre-commercial at the moment, right? So they're not yet earning their money in the market. They can do so. Actually, Europe is leading in those as well. They can have by over a decade or two a very significant contribution to our energy mix if we manage to get them into the market. What we are trying to do at the moment, and that's not only the Ocean Mission, but it's through a number of programs and activities, is to see how we can help de-risking these activities. A lot of funding has gone into R&I, into technology development, basically from the previous Horizon program, the Research Framework program. And I think the big challenge we have to address is to see how we can take out the risk that is in getting from the technology development into the market, right? So if you're an investor, you are not going to put a lot of money into a technology that is tried and tested for the first time. You don't quite know whether it will survive the first year in the sea, in a very corrosive, hostile environment, when you put these turbines into the water, to salt water. And so I think what we need are models of de-risking, of insuring against this initial investment risk that will help them get into the market.
Okay, and just on that, is the European Union going to act as the guarantor to help this de-risking strategy and the insurer of last resort? How do you see it?
It's not really for me to say. I'm probably the least well-placed person because I don't sit on the big pots of money. But I think the programs are there. I think we are talking to the European Investment Bank, so to our European bankers in Luxembourg, and these are things that require, that just need to be developed. I mean, it's something that is needed and at the same time difficult to do because you need to have a viable financial proposition to get there.
Okay, thank you. John Bell, question for you. What about the role of ports, both in terms of restoring ecosystems and renewable energy?
Well, just one follow-on to the last question.
Sure.
We are actually working in financial innovation. We've developed a circular bio-based fund where indeed the EU institutions are acting as the investor of last resort so that we can deal with these very high-risk areas. So we're piloting, and research is moving into financial and business models as well. Now, the ports, as everybody has said this morning, we're talking about a place-based activity. The way to address these issues in an integrated way is at sea basin level, and ports play an absolutely critical role in that. Whether you're talking about the opportunities in terms of the services and the jobs that can be developed, or you're talking about managing some of the risks in terms of the carbon footprint that ports themselves are involved in, or indeed in terms of servicing some of the ecosystems footprint or restorations that will have to be generated out of port infrastructures. And I think it's part of the thinking that's going on in terms of how this mission initiative will start. Where would we start demonstrating these breakthroughs and convening and mobilizing the kind of innovators, partners, investors and communities to try out and see what this destination could be? And I think ports are very likely to be very central to that.
Okay, thank you. Just going to scan through some comments here. Quick response, Bernard. Cesar de Oliveira asks, should the youth be included in the Blue Forum?
To start with, we have actually we have set up what we call a EU for Ocean Coalition, and it's basically a program where we're actually reaching out to not only to young people but to schools. So we are working on developing curricula. We work with blue schools in Portugal, for instance. We work with schools here to try ocean-related curricula in the school education cycle. Definitely, I think it's very important. It's very important, and also in the ocean mission, I think one of the things we really want to do is reinforce what's already out there in terms of winning over the hearts and minds of everybody, young people, but also society as a whole, in terms of just understanding the importance and what is at stake in the oceans.
Thank you. I'm just going to read some quick comments here. So, for Anonymous, the ocean is dying at a fast pace. If we don't act now, in 10 years, it will be too late to reverse human species extinction. Just the kind of good news we need this morning. And there's no real awareness and commitment to tackle the situation. I think that's pretty much disputable from what we've heard this morning. And what to expect from society if the science politicians give are at the minimum contradictory. I didn't hear too many contradictory statements this morning. And let's scan down a little bit. Renewable, it should be clear today that only renewable hydrogen is the energy of the future. Again, we have heard so many different possible renewable options which seem entirely sustainable this morning. And I just want to go back to something Tovi said earlier on about the lower cost of innovation technology. So a lot of this research has been done. The cost of entry is getting lower, and the scale-up capacity is now substantially better. Is this a tipping point in terms of these technologies? Do you think that market entry for entrepreneurs, for innovators, and for venture capital is just primed to accelerate this process? Tovi.
Yes, a very short answer is probably yes. But I think if I used floating as a good example, then that's kind of has gone from kind of a brilliant idea on the back of a napkin by some of our researchers to actually demonstrating projects and this first floating offshore wind farm. It's kind of been going on over a process of 15 years.
Like the napkin stories. So, what was the development from the back of the napkin? What happened?
Well, there was two of our researchers in Equinor out sailing, and they actually observed a floating buoy in the water, and really got the brilliant idea for how to solve how to move from bottom fixed to floating, and that then they sketched it on the back of a napkin. And later then that is what evolved into our high wind concept, which is our floating concept. So where we are on the floating concept now, from kind of that very initial one in 2001, we are now at the stage where we have started construction of the next floating wind farm that will happen in Norway, which is kind of the next stepping stone to further drive down the cost. But what we will need after that is a much bigger and a more commercial floating park. So that will be the natural next step. But we think we will be ready to commercialize it by 2030. But it will require still the financial kind of framework to help that really get going. And some interesting data here is actually that 80% of world's sea is actually in what we consider kind of deeper waters, over 60 meters, where bottom fixed offshore wind will not be, at least today, feasible. So then you're over to floating, and I think that will be a key for us to really unlock the potential in the floating or in the ocean. Yeah.
John Bernard, do you want to rename this the Big Napkin Strategy? Would that work for you for the blue economy? We're going to our wrap-up comments now as well. Raquel, you want to start? So just closing remarks. What does Europe need to do to protect the blue economy and to make this a viable economic strategy?
Well, as already said, we need to stop investing in the sectors that do not meet the requirements of sustainability, of course. I think also give more incentives to youth. We need to be also recognized from our work and make all the way towards the position that you are all in now. So sometimes I often see that they're always the same person talking about the same themes. So give some room to the youth, just like you did to me today. And I really would like to have that way of thinking for other panels to also have the youth always present.
You're too modest. Your contribution was is equal to anyone else today as well. Thank you. John Bell, your last remarks?
To those who think there's a lack of urgency, I mean, as I said at the beginning, as Commissioner Sinkovic said, this is what the European Union is for the next 30 years. So what we need to make this transition happen is a full mobilization. First of all, is to see what the destination is in terms of the economy, nature, and the kind of society that we want. Set the direction in terms of areas in which markets can form, businesses can be built, people can build their lives and their jobs. And we need to put the means in place. This is where research and innovation comes into it. And I think as in your napkin analogy, there's another analogy here that people use talking about the economy. We're not picking winners, we're picking races. And the one that we have to win is the one where the clock is indeed ticking. But my conclusion would be, you know, we may be running out of time, but we're not running out of ideas.
Thanks so much. Bernard, last remarks.
Along the same lines, it's anything but business as usual. We need to get out of a frame of mind that sort of pits the ecology against the economy, and we need to realize that, and that applies especially to the oceans, that if we don't make a really serious effort to protect our oceans now, we are basically just cutting off the branch you're sitting on, and you know, the consequences in terms of everything that's economic and social, jobs and well-being and our society surviving is going to be diminished. So this is really important. So for us, you know, the clear my clear sense is that we need to tackle the climate problem, of course, and you know, specifically in the oceans, the EU has set itself a target of 30% sea area protected and really protected, not just on paper, by 2030. I'll be a happy man if that happens by then. But it's also something that I believe is really essential, not even for us, but for our children.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And last word, Tove.
I would like to thank you very much for this productive and insightful discussion. And as said, we think that offshore wind has the potential to become a key contributor in reaching those climate ambitions. And we are ready to contribute with our industrial experience. We have a decade operating experience from floating wind and 5 decades actually from kind of ocean experience. And key strengths that we possess are within experience of large complex projects and marine operations and maintenance, and not to mention technology and innovation. And we would very much like to continue that. We're committed to continue driving innovation, research and development of new offshore renewable technologies. And we also strive for creating jobs and economic opportunities across the value chain. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you to all our panelists today. It's clear, as we heard earlier, there is no Green Deal without the blue economy as well. And if the ambition of the technology is to be matched, it should be matched by the ambition to communicate what can clearly be a huge motivating and driving factor for the recovery and the prosperity of future generations in Europe. So thanks to all our panelists this morning, those who took time to be with us in our audience. Thanks to Commissioner Sinkovic also for taking time to be with us and for his excellent remarks today too. Thank you to Equinor for the support, without whom this wouldn't happen today. And to our team here, Malta, Jacques and Simona. You don't see them, but I do, just behind the scenes. Thanks for all their efforts too. So I'm Brian Maguire, wish you a good afternoon.